Hello, it's Rebecca here, and today I'm designing a layout for Papermaze, and this month I'm working with the absolutely stunning colour study collection by Vicki Boutin, and I am in love with this collection. I love the papers so much that I just want to hang them up on my wall and not cut into them, so it was quite painful in a way having to make layouts with it. But I was really drawn to this paper here. It's called Colour Wheel, and it's got different sections in it of different colours, like a pie chart. I've seen it used a few times already, and I was trying to think of something different to do with it. So I had an idea in my head of what I wanted to achieve, but on paper it didn't actually look as nice as it did in my head. So my plan changes slightly as I go through. But my initial idea was to split each kind of pie chart section into three. So I'd have two narrow strips either side and a larger strip in the middle. And I wanted to distress all the edges and then stick them back on my background paper as a pie chart, but with the two outside narrow strips close together and flat, and the wider strip that I'd cut from the centre kind of overlapping them slightly, sticking out a bit, and raised up on foam. And although I kind of do that, I initially had planned to use, kind of like I'm doing there, the whole sheet and go the whole way around and rebuild the colour wheel. But it just wasn't looking right with all the strips and having them all distressed. It just made it look really, really busy. And it was a bit of a mess, really. There was too much going on. So it took me a while to obviously to figure that out. So I do go through and cut all of the triangles into strips, and then I just have a quick play. But yeah, so all I've done is cut them all up, distress the edges, and then I'm going to have a play and rebuild. And for my background, I'm using that gorgeous paper. It's called Line Drawing, and it's possibly one of my favourites in the collection. It has got some very subtle colour in it, and I absolutely love it. So I've decided to avoid white cardstock again. It's becoming a thing for me, and I'm going to use that for my background. But I want to jazz it up a bit, and I want to add a bit of gold. So I've got a Tim Holtz stencil here and Ranger texture paste. That's opaque matte, this one. It's the only texture paste I will ever use. I absolutely love it, and it dries really quickly and quite dimensional, so I do like it. And then I've got a gold embossing powder here. This one is by Wow, and as you can see, I'm almost out of it, so I'm going to need to get some more. I have got a Papermania one as well, but I don't find the colour as nice. It's more of a kind of a what I would call a cheap gold looking colour, like your Christmas decoration kind of gold. So I do prefer this one. So all I've done is spread some texture paste onto my background through that stencil, and then whilst it's still wet, directly onto that I have poured the embossing powder, and I'm going to heat that with my heat gun and have that set, and it kind of sets and dries really sparkly. So it doesn't look too sparkly here, but by the time it's been heated up and melted, it'll be really sparkly. So once that powder has been melted and set, I decided I want to add some white splatters to my background. So I've watered down some white gesso. I find this works much better than using a white acrylic paint. I just find it keeps the white colour a bit better, whereas my acrylic paint kind of goes translucent and it's not as noticeable on the page. So I use the white gesso for that. And then I also decided I want some gold splatters. So I'm using a metallic gold acrylic paint, and again just watering it down and adding some splatters to my background. I'm mainly focusing on the outer edge of the page because obviously the centre is mainly going to be covered up with the colour wheel. So just adding loads and loads of splatters, and then I dry that off again with my heat gun. And then off camera, obviously at this point I had had a play with this colour wheel and decided that it just wasn't looking as nice as I'd imagined having all the colours back in. Just way too busy for me. So I selected my favourite colours from the wheel, and to be honest with you, I still use most of them. I think the only two I left off were the red, and I think it was like a pale pink or lilac kind of colour. But just by leaving those two sections out, it just opened the page up a little bit and I was a lot happier with it. So I'm just gluing them roughly in place, just really lightly with a bit of PVA glue, just to make sure I'm happy with placement before I move on. I had initially planned to add stitching, black stitching through these on my layout. The wheels have got black circles drawn around them, and I hadn't decided whether I was going to follow those lines or do some out kind of from the centre of the wheel all the way out to the edge down the centre of each of the strips, but it was just looking busy enough as it was, and I just thought it didn't need that extra detail. So it's funny how I had a really clear plan in my head of how this layout was going to go, what was going to go where, how it's going to look, and as I sat down to create it, it just wasn't happening. So just had a bit of a rethink, and now I've got those colours back in place. I've noticed I've covered up most of my gold heat embossing, so I had to go back through and just add a bit more in there to bring it out a bit further. So I'm happy with the placement of them now, so I'm going to stick the outer edges down with small foam pads, and then those wider strips that are going over the centre I'm raising up on 2 levels of foam tape to bring a bit more dimension into the page. And I just work my way around and doing that for every colour, and those wider ones I'm kind of bringing out a bit so that they come out further. And then I've printed my photo in black and white. I really wanted to use this photo in colour on a layout because it was taken of my little boy at hospital recently, and that rainbow on the wall was gorgeous colours, but the colours weren't the same as what's on this colour wheel, and it just really didn't look right. So I've had to print it black and white. I printed it 6x4 and then cut it down slightly so it's a bit smaller. I don't usually scrap photos this big. I'm normally kind of a 3x4 girl, but I just felt it needed to be slightly bigger to fill the space that I'd left from that colour wheel. So I've mounted it onto white cardstock and again on black, just to help give a bit of separation from my background, because already this is looking very busy for me and I'm quite uncomfortable with busy. It's not really my thing, but I love the colours in this. So I'm persevering, and I'm just going to try and embellish lightly if I can. So I've got loads of these butterflies here. I've got a bag and it's got fussy cut butterflies and some of the vellum circles I've got left, and I just keep them in that bag. That butterfly paper is called Pretty Things and it's gorgeous. Some of the butterflies have got light colouring on them, so I tried to select ones that would work with the colour wheel, because I don't really want to paint them or anything, but like the one I've put on that green section there has kind of got a bit of green colouring to it, and the other smaller one's got some yellow, so they worked well. And I've just stuck the centre of the bodies down and I'm leaving the wings free so that they flap, and that just adds a bit more dimension. And I've used glossy accents to stick those down just to make sure the centre of that butterfly holds. And then I felt like I needed a bit more colour behind my photo, so I've just pulled out another patterned paper from the collection and used that as another layer, and just distressing the edge of that one. And of course I've decided you can never have too much gold or too much sparkle on a layout, so I'm going to add a layer of gold glitter cardstock behind my photo as well, just to kind of bring in that gold a bit more. I've got it in my heat embossing, so it was quite nice to have a bit more. And again, just going to add a layer and distress the edges. So other than adding a layer of foam behind that, that's all I'm going to do with my photo. But I do want to add a bit more to my background. So I'm going to come back in with my white gesso and my gold acrylic paint and add loads of splatters on my colour wheel to just add a bit more interest to it and make it look a little less flat. Despite this being very busy for me and obviously lacking white cardstock again, I absolutely love how this layout is looking at this point. Just those gorgeous bright colours against the dark background with those hints of sparkly gold, I absolutely love. And I would have been quite happy at this point to just stop and put this in a frame on the wall because I just think it's stunning. But alas, I must carry on. So, like I said, I've stuck some foam behind my photo there and I'm going to stick that down in the gap and I'm going to try and work some clusters around that. So I've got both packs of the embellishment ephemera and I was just flicking through, having a look, trying to see what would work for this layout, trying to be careful with what I selected because this was a photo of my little boy at hospital. So a lot of this collection is about kind of like arty stuff and creativity, and that wouldn't have really worked for this particular layout. So I found this title piece here that says "You've Got This," and I thought that worked perfectly. So I'm going to use that as my title, and then I've got a couple of bits on the side there that come in like a tear apart section. I think one says "Capture It All" and the other one says "Real Life." Let's have a look, what does it say? Yeah, "Real Life Stuff," the other one says. So I've put those two at the top there. But I really need something in that bottom left hand corner. And I go through literally everything in this collection trying to see what would work without making this layout look too much busier. So I found these two little tags and I have a bit of a play with those, trying to see if I can tuck them under or do something with them, but I was struggling to make those work. So I moved on from that and carried on having a look through to see what I could find. So I'm moving on to the second pack now, and I think the problem I was having is, as beautiful as the ephemera pieces in this collection are, they're quite large, as is quite typical of the Vicki Boutin collections, and I was struggling to make them work because I felt like I just wanted a couple of small things down in that corner that wasn't going to completely overpower my layout. Excuse me. So I've got these flowers here and I just thought I'm never going to use them as big pieces as they are, so I get my scissors and chop into them and think about adding a couple of flowers. And then I found this corner floral piece, I can't even speak now, floral piece that I thought might work, and then pulled that off again and found another one. And it was just about having a play just to see what I could make work and what I was happy with without overpowering the layout and making it look too much busier. I'm still thinking on those tags, so I've kept those out, but I'm really not happy with those large florals. So now I'm going through the sticker book, trying to see if there's anything in that, and I decide I really don't like those, and I think I'm going to go with that floral cluster. But it's got a white border on it. There isn't really any white in this layout other than around the title, and I felt like it needed something to help it pop. So I go all the way around the edge with a black gel pen, and just trace all the outer lines, and I think that helps it pop out a little bit more from the page. So I'm much happier with that black outline now. I'm just going to trim a tiny slit of that white out so that I can kind of have the corner of that leaf overlapping the photo, just so it sits a bit better around my photo. And as always, I'm going to pop that up on foam pads for a bit more dimension. So once that's in place, I'm then moving on to my title, getting that stuck down. I don't want to add too much more around that floral cluster because it's already rather large for me. It's larger than I was wanting, but I'm happy enough with it. It works. So I stuck my title down and I'm just adding a couple more foam pads underneath just to raise that bottom section up. I need to get these bits stuck down as well, so I just glue the bit that will stick over my photo and then add a couple of foam pads underneath the rest of it so that it sits nicely with sort of flush to the colour wheel sections. And then back to the sticker book again, just seeing if there's any other little bits and pieces I can add without adding too much busyness to the page. These are the other stickers in the collection. It's a 12 by 12 kind of sticker sheet, and I picked out a couple of the holographic butterflies. They're gorgeous, they've got lovely colours, all the colours that I've used in the colour wheel plus a gold outline, so they look absolutely beautiful. So I've added a couple of those on. The one on the left there, I think I actually end up moving down once I turn the camera off and just nestle it behind the leaf at the top of that floral cluster there. So I'm still going through. I feel like that bottom section just needs something, so I've picked out this gorgeous piece here that says everything's gonna be all right, and I thought that was really lovely considering we were at hospital on this day. So I've popped that under there, but now that's created a space underneath the word you've that I'm not happy with. So I'm now trying to find something to fill that space. I tried one of the round stickers that says real life, but it was orange and I wasn't really keen on the colour. So I come back to those little tags and decide that that multicoloured one would fit perfectly in there. So I just tear it in half to make it fit a bit easier. And I forget to stick it down, so I do have to come back later on and stick some foam pads under that. I then toyed with the idea of adding a frame to the page, but decided that was just way too much. This layout is, as I've said, really busy for me. Not my normal style at all, but I absolutely love the colours, especially how the gold works with all those beautiful colours. So I'm really happy with how it all came out in the end. So I shall leave you with some close-ups. If you'd like to see, have the direct links to all the products I've used, I'll pop the link to the Papermaze blog in the description box below and you can find those there. And please do remember to subscribe if you'd like to see more from this collection. So yep, I'll leave you with the close-ups and I shall see you next time.